see some faces that I know and some that I don't. I'm Dr. CARNEY, and I'm a full-time assistant professor in the counseling department. And we are doing a brown bag series on dissertation writing. So tonight we'll be talking about the literature review, which is your chapter 2. And we'll have later presentations on your chapter 3 and 4 and 5, and also writing, and I think library resources as well, Walter?
And formatting.
And formatting, so, you know, hopefully, and I think people are going to be doing a variety of different ways of presenting the material. Today I'm going to do more of kind of a discussion group, and I've got different handouts from both the dissertation guide as well as some things that I've prepared, as well as things specific to the counseling department. But the dissertation guide does speak to everyone who's writing a dissertation. So hopefully everybody will find something that they are able to take away from today. So why don't we go around and just tell me your name and what department that you're in, and also if you are currently writing a dissertation, what your topic is and where you are in that process. And why don't we start there? Okay.
Start here. Okay. I'm Mary Goodwin. I'm with the clinical psychology program. Not writing one yet, but next year we will be.
Okay. So
or maybe the end of the year or so. So I don't have my subject yet. I don't know in general where I want to go. Something in with trauma, childhood trauma probably.
Okay.
But I don't have the hypothesis or any. I don't have the title.
Okay. So you'll be writing a CRP, right? A clinical research project. So
yes.
Hopefully there's some things. I'll be saying dissertation, but I think a lot of it can probably be applied to what you'd be writing in the clinical department as well. Yep. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Sana Gaitunde. I'm pretty much where Mary is, second year doctorate program, clinical psychology. And I'm in a statistics class right now, but by the end of it, I think we need to come up with a proposal or some kind of a draft. So I'm still exploring certain topics. I do have something in mind, but I'm not sure how it's going to turn out, so I just want to get more information.
Okay.
I'm Mila Vasquez. I'm from the counseling psychology program. I'm on the first phase of the dissertation. I do have a topic, and I'm working right now on writing the perspective. My topic is the dreamers, the resiliency factors of undocumented high school Latina students pursuing higher education. That's kind of the temporary title. Basically what I'm looking is, you know, the dreamers, as you know about the DREAM Act, are the immigrant, not just Hispanic, but in general, immigrants, kids that came when they were very young. And you know, when they are in high school, generally when they're about to go to college, they discover, oh, I don't have papers, you know, the legal residency. So many of them, they get frustrated and don't continue their studies, they drop out from high school, while others do pursue that. There are some schools that take them being undocumented, but you have to pay like a foreign student. So it's extremely expensive. So I'm working on that. I did part of the research, and I already contact some dreamers that are gonna be volunteering to kind of test my questions of my research. So I'm very eager to do that. So by the end of this year, I should be defending my perspective.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kizzy Ross. I'm in a counseling psych program. I'm working actually on chapter 2 of my study. And my study is looking at maternal, African-American maternal attitudes towards mental illness and impact of decline treatment. So looking at African-American mothers' views towards mental illness itself, the concept of mental illness, and how that impacts the client's treatment, whether they do better in treatment or worse. That's pretty much it.
Hi, my name is Deborah Zolotov. I'm in the study program in my second year. I don't really have a topic, but I know where I want to go as far as I would like to work with veterans and post-traumatic stress disorder. So hopefully by the end of the year, like everyone else, I should be formulating some kind of topic around that and see where it goes from there.
I'm impressed with the PsyD students who are here even before you've started on the CRP. That's great to start already preparing and getting some ideas and thinking ahead, so great.
I'm Antoinette Lancaster, and I'm on the first phase of the dissertation process. I'm in the counseling psychology program with the concentration in counselor education and supervision. I'm undecided for my topic. I kind of think I want to focus on sex education and the parental role in sex education, but I'm also interested in phencyclidine abuse. So I need to figure it out quickly so that I can really start the process.
Hi, my name is Subichaya Misa. I'm from the business department. I guess I'm the only one who's sitting here. So I just started my second year of doctoral program. I'm still working on the topic, so probably it's going to be something about Asia, international business in Asia, because I'm still working around. So I want to know how, what am I going to do? I kind of want to get information before I start.
Sure. And I'm sorry, what did you say your name was?
Supichaya, Supichaya.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Great, okay, and that's good for me to know who I'm talking to, so I know kind of how to gear this. So it sounds like there's some kind of topic development even ideas that we can go over, as well as the actual like nuts and bolts of writing the literature review, what to include, maybe even how to get started with that whole process. What are some, and I know, I wrote a dissertation. I know that it can be challenging, and I actually enjoy the literature review process, but I know that some parts can be challenging to that chapter specifically. So I wonder a little bit about what are maybe some challenges for you all that you foresee, so that I can kind of gear that way too, or what have you heard, what do you expect? Let's start there.
I guess for me, I just keep imagining like all of these articles, like reading all of these articles and trying to pick out ones that support my topic, at the same time trying to put them together to make sense, to support the topic. Like all of that is kind of like overwhelming right now. And also trying to, whether I should read the abstract, should I look at the actual study itself, how the researcher conducted the study, would that be a quantitative, qualitative, what type of variables they use, participants and things like that. So that's kind of where I am, like trying to figure out what to pull that's needed and what I don't need, and also what articles to pull. Because what I'm finding is that I'm not finding too much information specifically looking at African American women attitudes towards that concept of mental illness. I'm finding all this other stuff, but not that in particular. So yeah, so that's kind of like my issue.
Yeah, and I would say that's probably the number one thing I hear in terms of the writing process, and specifically with chapter 2. A lot of times students get started, and once they're kind of in the role of things, the writing quality is pretty good, and they're able to get going, but the sheer magnitude of writing a comprehensive literature review can be very intimidating. Kind of where to start. There's so much information out there. Some of it is picking a topic that is unique and is going to add to the literature in a substantial way. Or you hear the opposite side. There's a huge gap in the literature, so big that I really can't find a lot of sources. So I do hear that a lot, chairing dissertations, just kind of that intimidation factor and kind of being able to get started and motivate through that process. So, anything else?
During one of the classes with Dr. Lane, he gave us kind of guidelines to follow when you choose, because we discussed that. There is so much information out there. How do you select? He recommended first reading the abstract, and then after reading the abstract, you find that it's a topic that may help you. then you have this little, I made it today, because I remember what he said, out per year.
Oh, yeah.
And
I have
with
this
you, it will
spreadsheet.
be independent, I'm doing a qualitative, so it's a little bit different, but I think the most important part for me is the relevance. Is this relevant to your topic?
Yeah.
Is it gonna help you?
Yeah.
So in that case, then you put there, because you're gonna forget how many articles. But if you have it there, then, this article goes to this chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3.
Yeah.
So I think for me it's a lot of organization. I mean, when I'm organized, I know where I'm going. If not, and I think this one just has put things into perspective. Like, okay, this is where I'm gonna start. And then Dr. I forgot her name. She used to be my advisor. They told me about doing a map, a concept map. When you write your literature review, this is your topic. Okay, what areas do you want to cover? And then with your articles, you go area by area. I don't know if that helps, but that's how I'm picturing. That's how I'm gonna write.
I've done both. I've done the spreadsheet, and I've also kind of done the timeline, because they do like a map timeline. So I've done that, but it's
Yeah, those are great tips, and we'll actually go through some of them as well. I like the idea of that spreadsheet. I'd like to be able to see that. So why don't let's start here. What is a literature review? What is it? I have the official definition here by the dissertation guide, but I'm curious.
Oh.
What is it?
a big body of related topics.
Big body of related topics. Okay, we can start there.
It's a review of all the studies that have been done about your topic.
Okay, is it? So it's a review of all the studies
Of
that have been done on your topic?
Studies.
Okay.
Okay. You start first with your topic, but your topic.
It's a tough question.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying just to, I know what it is, but it's so hard. You try to, your literature review should cover not only your topic, but the specific, the gap that you want to fill into the research that is out there, right?
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. And actually, but you know what, Mila, actually a lot of students do think that it is a review of everything that's been done on your topic. And I think that's part of the intimidation factor, right, coming into it. You get onto, everyone knows how to get onto the library databases, and if not, actually, later in this dissertation series, we will have something on library resources. And you put in your keywords, say you put in trauma and childhood, and you get thousands and thousands of hits, right? And so I think one of the misunderstandings about a literature review, right, is that it's some completely exhaustive everything on your topic. So let me hand this out, because this has, and I realize we only have an hour, so let me hand these out. Let me keep one. And I just want to bring your attention to that first definition. And it says the foundation of the dissertation begins with a review of theories, methodologies, and measurement considerations central to the research question. Okay? The literature review must be selective, analytical, logical, and provide substantiation. Okay? And everyone knows where to find the dissertation guide, incidentally. Okay, and for those in clinical psychology, you'll have a different document. There must be some kind of CRP guide that.
I'm sure.
And the dissertation guide, if you're in the e-classroom, if you have a dissertation chair, it's under, I think it's important documents, it's on the left-hand side. You'll be able to get a copy of the updated dissertation guide. And I added the emphases here just to bring our attention to some of these key words. So somebody said central to the research question, or something like that. So once you have a topic or a general research question identified, you want to choose the literature that is related to that. So again, simply putting in keywords to general topics isn't going to be all that helpful, and it might actually have the opposite effect of being somewhat intimidating. The literature review must be selective, so you're selecting topics, you're selecting very purposefully the articles that you're going to choose. Analytical. What do you all think about in terms of, what does that mean, analytical? So when you're choosing articles and you're writing them up in a literature review, is it simply a summary of what you found, right? So when you're reviewing articles, or you're reviewing a book chapter, what have you, what is the expectation there if it's being said that it should be analytical?
Maybe trying to understand it or doing interpretation.
Okay. Yep. And there may be some summarization in there, right? But also some interpretation of the results, right? Analyzing it into the larger framework of your writing, okay? And I have seen dissertations that simply summarize article to article. So let's say we have, 15 or 20 pages, and you have a paragraph or two on one article, say, and then a paragraph or two on another, and it's just summarizing article by article. And that's not what we're looking for, right? We're looking for an analytical process of bringing those topics together. Logical, so follow a logical sequence. So Mila, you brought some kind of spreadsheet, and there's concept maps, there's outlining that you can use so that it follows a logical format, and provide substantiation. And what it's meaning by that is support for your study. So what's the gap there? What are you trying to fill? Why is it important to do your study? And you may find studies out there that are very similar to yours. So what is the unique contribution of your study? And keeping that in mind, along with your research question, during the entire writing process is what's going to keep you on track. Questions so far? Okay, so just kind of re-emphasizing requirements from the dissertation guide, support the existence of a problem, right? Include contrary or controversial opinions fairly and objectively. Some people shy away from that a little bit, but it's okay. You're going to find studies there that that sometimes debate each other or sometimes slightly different results, and that's okay. Be well organized and written to provide a framework for the proposed study and discuss how the investigation fills a void in the literature. Specifically in our department, there's a requirement of 20 pages in length. Okay, and I'm not sure, what is it for the clinical psychology department? Now this is of course just chapter 2, not the entire document.
I'm not sure. I think it's 60, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
It's more than 20 or not.
20.
It's more than 20.
Yeah, I think 60 is, yeah, but it's more than 20, I'm sure, 40, I think.
Yeah.
40 to 60.
Okay, and then what about the business department?
No idea.
Okay. And you're still a little ways away from that
Like,
process.
I have like 1.5 years
Okay.
to prepare myself.
Okay. So, all right, so 20 pages minimum in length and APA style obviously is required. So let's see, probably the best thing to do, why don't I hand out this. This is from the dissertation guide, so this is just for your all's reference. I also wanted to hand out, this is a Chapter 2 evaluation checklist, and I hope this is helpful for students in other departments too. Although, and actually, I think business falls under this as well, but I think this will be helpful for the CRP students as well. this is what your chair is looking for when they read your literature review. These are some things that they're looking for to see that you have passed that section of dissertation. So you all are in certain blocks, 9001, 9002, and this is what we look at in terms of the literature review. So why don't we go over the evaluation in terms of what your chair is going to be looking for, and then maybe we can talk about actually starting the writing process and what that looks like. So I'll give you a moment to just kind of look at this.
Number 6, it says it has to include literature within the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was something else. So it has to be not 7, it's 5.
Well,
but I always thought it was 7.
Yeah, it depends on who you ask, honestly.
Okay.
Usually it's a range, 5 to 7 years. I mean, more recent obviously tends to be more desirable. But within 5 to 7 years. But then there will also be these classic or seminal works that it really doesn't matter how old they are. You know, that something that's by one of the original theorists like Freud or Skinner or Rogers or someone like that who you want to include the original source. Was that your question?
Actually, it was a concern for topics like veterans and post-traumatic stress. There's not a lot of review on that. And some of the articles that I've looked at in the past go way back into the early 80s. And that's not going to fall within the 5 to 7 years. How do you address it?
Yeah, well yours, I mean, that one's actually been very interesting because there actually has been a lot very recently, and then there wasn't a lot for a while, and then it was kind of back in the 80s like you were saying. So that's going to be an interesting thing to review because so much has happened obviously in those times. I think you will find things, but you may find a lot of contradictory things is my guess. And part of it, you know, part of it is putting in the keywords that's going to accurately get yours, and there are ways to do searches where you can narrow it by time periods, so only look at 2007 through 2013 and see what you pull up. Also, another way to do it is to find an expert in the area and get some recommendations about leading authors. So leading authors in the field for PTSD or for something specific that you're looking at. If you're really feeling overwhelmed, I've certainly grabbed colleagues who I know are experts in the area and said, you know, PTSD specifically with these combat veterans, and who are some names I need to be searching for. And sometimes if you're really feeling overwhelmed with all the data or lack of data, that can help you get started. But I'm thinking specifically with you, Deborah, in terms of is there a, number 3, is there a historical account of the topics and variables to be studied? That may be relevant specifically for your review. But in general, we want to try to look at the last 5 to 7 years, unless it's a seminal article, unless it's something that you know, is very important, is judged in the scholarly community. Things that are jumping out to me gaps, well organized. Okay. So everything should really be stemming from your research question, okay? And your research question can change. You may not know exactly what you want to study or exactly what your research question is, but what I would encourage you to do before you jump into all of the resources that are out there is to come up with some kind of question. What do you want to know? Okay? And sometimes just asking yourself that will help you narrow it down. You know, when somebody asks for a topic, it's so easy to kind of throw out some terms. But when they ask you, what do you want to know? What do you want to find out about your topic? So, Mary, can I put you on the spot for a second?
You did.
So what do you want to know? What do you want to find out? And you can keep it as general as you want. You
Well,
certainly.
actually, the more I think about it, I really, I'm more interested in doing a study on women who have been involved in intimate partner violence and survivors of that, and how they're faring, how they manage to get their life back on track. I mean, and that's really my, you know, the key. Children and women are two key interests, but I think women is really more pressing for me.
Okay, great. And so it doesn't have to be a perfectly refined
Yeah.
research question, but it's something that you can say, this is what I want to know, this is what I want to find out, and that will help frame doing your literature searches, organizing your review, okay? So Mary wants to find out, what would you say, how women from domestic violent, domestically violent relationships,
right. Yeah, how they manage to get their lives back on track, or not. I mean, I don't know. Some of them surely do, but yeah.
How do
And
they survive?
yeah,
Recover?
yeah, recover. Yeah, that's a good way to do it, I think.
I like that. That's a counseling, a strengths-based approach. I like that. Okay. Okay. So even starting there, kind of a rough outline of a research question is really going to help when you go to your databases, right? Because if Mary just said, well, I'm interested in domestic violence, we all know what happens when you put domestic violence into a keyword. I mean, very, very overwhelming. So with this kind of thing, you can search for women in domestic violence. Again, that's probably still going to get a lot. We can do survivors of domestic violence. That's another big keyword. Recovery as well. But I'm getting a little off track here. Let's go back to this, and then if it's okay, Mary, I'm going to pull from your topic just for some examples, so we
That's
can.
great.
Sometimes it's a little easier
Giving you ideas.
to pull something rather than talk kind of theoretically about all of this. So, okay. So, any other questions about the evaluation? What we're looking for as your professors, as your chairs? We're going to be looking at those, and I hope you'll keep that handout so that you can think about that, you know, while you're writing. So you should have your research question, which everything should stem from. Okay. A definition of the problem. Okay. So what we're looking for is a real clear definition of what that problem is. Okay. And so for women in domestic violence situations, what is the problem there? Okay. So, and I'm sure we can go on a lot about what the problems there are. You know, not only at risk to the women, but also the children. Statistics, perhaps, something to include. There are lots of national organizations that deal with violence against women, you know, pulling some information about that. What is the problem here that you want to investigate, and why is it important?
Well, they have extremely low self-esteem, many of them, most of them, and they are ashamed, so they may not, so they are maybe reluctant to get back into the mainstream without a lot of help. They may not want to tell people who don't know what they've been through. So they're isolated. They may continue to isolate in some ways. So there are multiple problems. I guess I need to just, there are multiple problems for
So
them.
absolutely, and so that problem definition piece is very important, and it might sound obvious, but again, if you're jumping into your literature review without defining your research question and what the problem is, you'll find yourself lost, okay? And you'll be writing about a topic that goes over here and some articles that go over there. So the research question, defining your problem, okay? And some of this will be, for those who are writing a dissertation, some of that will be in chapter 1 or an introduction. Theory and theorists, okay? So some other people who've maybe written a little bit in chapter 2 or written a little bit in their dissertation already, what are some of the theories and the theorists that you've been pulling out and why?
I haven't pulled out any, because I just started dissertation, chapter 2. But I'm thinking, since my topic is looking at families, maybe some family theorists, maybe whatever the big people are out there with family, family theories. I don't really know, I guess that's another question. And so how do you determine which particular theory or theorist would fit? Because my topic is like mental illness, attitudes, impact of treatment, and then family. So it's kind of like 3 things that I can pull from.
And when we talk about kind of the actual writing process and outlining, we're going to talk about the variables. Because in a literature review, you want to attend to each one of the variables that are in your study. So for you, you said you've got...
so I have family piece, looking at mothers,
family,
mothers. I have treatment, whether they do better or worse, and mental illness.
Okay, so let's come back to that.
Okay.
In terms of choosing theories, and now some of this will be guided by your chair, in terms of what's acceptable. Some people are looking at a specific intervention, and that intervention needs to come from a theoretical base, right? So those are the easy ones, right? So if you're doing a specific intervention and it's a CBT intervention, right, then you would obviously need to pull from certain CBT theorists in order to substantiate your review, okay? But there are other theories out there. So for example, domestic violence, right? There are theories out there as to why women stay in certain relationships, right?
Yes.
And factors that help them leave. There are things like Stockholm Syndrome, I'm thinking of, related theories that are out there. And all of that can fall under this. Again, some of this will be guided by your chair, so I would refer you back to them. Some chairs really prefer that you use a theorist specifically, like an Ellis or a Rogers or something like that. Or a family theorist, right? So some of that will be topic and paper specific, but those are ways to choose theories that underlie what you're doing, right? And ultimately, we want a literature review that adds to the existing information that's out there in the world. And if you don't have that theoretical base, how can it do that, right? So we're looking for theory, we're looking for theorists. Selective and analytical, we talked about that, right? We're not just reviewing for the sake of reviewing. Trust me, we don't want to read that, you don't want to write that. That it's relevant, okay? And some of that can be, is it relevant to current events, okay? Some of it is relevance to your topic. But again, just keep reminding yourself so you stay on track. We talked about recent works versus classical works. It's okay to include some controversy, presented fairly and objectively. Thanks, Kizzy.
Thank you, Dr. Carney.
Yeah. And this one is pretty big, the gap in the literature. So this is still your rationale, coming back to your research question, what the problem is. What are the gaps there? Why is your research important, right? What's lost in there? And a lot of times those things are connected.
So you do your literature review, and as it's coming together, you're realizing, like Deborah, you said, you're realizing there's a gap there, right? There's something about PTSD in this population and PTSD in that population, and doing this intervention, but there's not specifically about this intervention with this population, okay? And that's where my study comes in, and that's why my study is important. Okay? So hopefully all of those ideas will help you bring together what you're trying to do here. Okay. Let's see. All right, so let's talk about how to actually start the writing process. Questions, thoughts, comments so far? Okay. All right. So the first thing, I'm going back to this initial handout that I gave you all. The first thing I say is rein it in. Hopefully I've impressed that enough upon you to really rein in your topic before you start jumping into all of these resources, so that you know what you're looking for, you know what you're trying to find. My suggestion is to build a tentative organizational chart based on your variables first. Well, first we do your research question, right? Even if it's just a tentative rough outline of a research question, knowing what you're looking for, knowing what question you're trying to answer. And then some kind of organizational chart so that you can pull in resources and organize them as you get them. Another experience that I've had with students is that they start to bring in information and they almost at some point get to the point where they forget what they reviewed and what they haven't and where they stored this one, and oh, where did I read about that particular point. So I really encourage you to have some kind of organizational system first before you jump into the databases, the libraries, what have you. So Mila had a couple good examples doing kind of a conceptual map or some kind of a spreadsheet that you can keep. I tend to do more like a spreadsheet, some kind of organizational chart, and that comes back to the variables. So I'm gonna, oh, Kizzy just left. I'll try to steal her variables, but I might need another example. So she has family and the mother's role, right? So okay, and then treatment and mental illness. Okay, so really we'd have to have her in here to find out exactly how she was trying to narrow that. But I'm on her dissertation committee, so I can kind of guess a little bit. So with treatment, I think she's looking at specifically severe mental illness, and she's looking at inpatient, an inpatient population. So I just know that about her study. And then so mental illness, I'm assuming that means SMI, so there's probably some overlap here. So some kind of organizational chart so that when you are getting your articles, right, you are listing them under your different variables, okay? So if you have your research question, so Mary, you talk about women and domestic violence, right? Yeah. And once you narrow that down a little bit further with your research question, you know, you can pull out some of the other variables too and list them. 1, 2, 3, 4, however many are coming out of your research question, 5, 6. And as you gather these articles, pull them into those categories so that you don't lose sight. And as you start to get more of these articles and more of these resources, little subheadings might start to appear, right? So right now, Kizzy was talking about family and the mother, right? As she goes through the literature, my guess is these are going to start to separate, right? She's going to find some family theorists, and she's going to find some things about mothers with children who are suffering from mental illness, right? So subheadings might come out. So again, just really encourage you to start organizing immediately and find out what resources go where, okay? questions so far? Okay. So I talked too about an inverted triangle. Well, maybe before I go into this, what are some things, and maybe you haven't, but what are there things that you all have tried in the past in terms of when you've written big research papers, right? And of course, none will be as big as the CRP or the dissertation. But in terms of writing maybe a research paper, anything that you've tried in terms of organization or conceptually? Or have you all kind of just started writing?
We've been writing. No. I've done an outline before. Well, I guess it's done an outline, but I've also done, I guess, something by topic. Well, the topic is there, but then there are little, I guess, little headings that I want to cover under the topic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've tried to group the research under those headings as I've gone and found it.
Okay,
and
so that
reviewed
sounds
it.
similar, yeah, to
Right.
this. Mm-hmm.
So that's been helpful. But I need to narrow down further, because by the time I go back and I'm really starting to write, even though I know which articles that I go with what subheading, I still find myself having to review, a second review of that article, which is going to make, you'll have to do it, but it seems time consuming, too time consuming. I should have done it. There's something that I'm missing. There's a link that's missing.
Maybe,
somewhere.
maybe not. Sometimes
Okay.
sometimes that process, it is time consuming, honestly.
Yeah.
And it does take rereading of things
Mhm.
and going through things again, and especially when it's something as detail oriented as this. But let's keep talking. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, Mila, did you have?
Index card, color index cards.
Okay.
Because I did CBS. Because what I did is, like for example, the pink are gonna be my methodology. Like, I need to read about qualitative case study, the yellow I haven't decided, but it could be the theory. And, the blue could be, one of the sub-theories or something like that.
Okay.
So I think this is old school, but I found that it's helpful for me because, I put into quotes on the page number.
Yeah.
So whenever I have to organize, pull it from there. And I'm planning to do on my reader spreadsheet on relevance, put, what article goes into what chapter, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3.
Okay.
So I will have 2 reference points. I don't know, that's my idea.
It's a good point to do what works for you. Everybody has different learning styles, and some people are much more tactile and need to have the colors, and that's fine. And some people are more electronic oriented and like it better when it's all on the screen. So that's a good point, just to know what works for you. These are some suggestions, but you really have to adapt it to your own learning style. Any other thoughts? So in terms of, so you've got all these articles that you've pulled. Well, that's all great and nice, and a good start because it's all organized in terms of topic area, because you have your research question, you have the variables you want to look at, and you started to collect some articles. So now, how do we take that and really organize it into something meaningful so that we can pick up our pen or our computer and start typing, right? So I encourage this kind of inverted triangle kind of thing. So this is kind of your general points, okay? So your general problem definition. For something like women and domestic violence, right? That's nice and general. So what would be some general things about women and domestic violence? And I'm thinking maybe some statistics.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe a definition, maybe some stats, maybe what else would go under there? Maybe some seminal articles. Okay. Really making the case for how important this is, but staying on a very general level.
Right.
Okay? And then what you'll do is keep going, and down here at the bottom is your most specific recommendations, your most specific articles, right? The little studies that look at one particular variable, right? That will be down here, and making the point that why your study is needed. Why my study, okay? So not just why is domestic violence important to look at, but why is my study needed?
So it's kind of going from a general to specific,
You got it.
specific point of
Mhm.
view.
So for your topic, Deborah, right? So what would be kind of the general for your topic? What would you be gathering for that?
General idea would be why soldiers refuse to seek help, or what is the problem or stigma behind seeking help.
Okay, so I would actually put that one level down. I would put the most general is, what is PTSD?
What,
Right? What are some rates of PTSD in the general population? The general population, right? The next step down would be the military population. The next step down would be specifically if you're looking at
male, female.
male, female, right? So you can see how we're starting to build our case to now why am I studying? Because females who are deployed at this time, I mean, I don't know, I'm just making something up, right? There's nothing about that population, right? So we start very general down to the specific, okay? So PTSD maybe in general. You could even start as high as anxiety disorders in general, but that might be a little too general, more than you need to be. But certainly PTSD in general. Then down to maybe treatment for PTSD that's out there in general, okay? And then after treatment of PTSD, maybe specific either types of treatment. I could see a couple different ways, either types of treatment or attitudes of people seeking treatment, right? Because you have talked about that, so maybe attitudes. So it's still related to treatment, right? So we're still building a logical argument, right? So attitudes, and then maybe attitudes specifically for military, okay? So you see how we're starting to get a little more specific in each level down, right? And then to specifically, you know, what do I want to look at? And of course you won't frame it like that, but you'll frame it as, here's the gap, here's the missing link, okay? So attitudes in the military, and then my question, you know, why don't they seek it? Why don't they seek treatment? Or what are the barriers, right? Barriers, and then last, what's missing? What's
I have a
missing?
question.
Yeah.
As we go through this process and we narrow it down,
Mm-hmm.
is this more or less, is this the introduction that we're presenting, or is this the body of our paper?
The body of your paper. And I can't speak specifically to CRP. I
Yeah, I
imagine,
understand.
you know, it will be very similar.
Yeah.
Certainly in the chapter 2 of a dissertation. The chapter 1 is more the introduction, the definition of terms, kind of those general things. And then when you get into chapter 2, you're really jumping into the depth. And this is generally what it looks like.
So, as we go down the inverted triangle, those become our variables in a sense.
Mm-hmm. They
Or
do.
subheadings.
Okay.
They do, absolutely. And I really encourage the use of headings and use of lots of headings. You can always take headings out, but to do a bunch of writing and then try to organize it on the back end is very difficult, if not impossible. So yeah, in essence, you're collecting your articles and then you're fitting it into a framework of your study, of how you're actually going to present that in your chapter 2. You know, and sometimes I have to admit, sometimes I skip this part and make these my headings. I do this first, make that my headings, and then find articles that way. So I find articles that go under here, under there, right? And so if you know, and sometimes you don't always know before you jump into the literature exactly what it is. So you can't really do this quite yet. You can have a general framework, but you can't quite build your argument yet. But if you know enough in advance and you know enough in terms of what's out there and also specifically what you're looking at, again, you go in knowing what you're looking to find. Now that doesn't mean that you're not open to finding something different. You may find a couple of articles that takes you in a totally different route than you anticipated, and of course you need to be open to that. But this makes it certainly easier. Questions, comments? Okay. So after you've done all this or conceptual map or some kind of spreadsheet, however you do it, have some kind of framework, and then you can dive into the resources, okay? So as I said, hopefully at this point everybody knows how to get onto the Argosy online databases. We have a library, obviously, downstairs. Walter is a wonderful resource. We also really recommend the Library of Congress to get connected with them as well. They've got every publication under the sun that's there. Some of you, have come from different institutions before you came to Argosy. Get connected with them too. There's lots of different things. We certainly encourage using books, book chapters, journal articles. You want relevant journals to your field, whether it's counseling, whether it's clinical psychology. There's going to be some overlap as well. They should be peer-reviewed journals, ideally. Other dissertations, so that should be kept, to a minimum, but you can certainly use other dissertation, government documents as well. Your online resources should be minimized in terms of, websites and things that you go to. Hopefully we're all aware of that, especially websites that can be changed, because there's really no way to regulate that quality, right? So things like Wikipedia or some of the psych, websites that are out there that any author can update. I mean, that's the problem with those online resources. So really you shouldn't be using any of them. I would say, sometimes things like the National Institute of Mental Health or very established organizations that are out there that are very known, you can pull some information from that, but certainly it should be limited. Okay, so from here, whichever stage that you're at, you definitely want to draft an outline, okay? And I believe Jennifer Veach is going to be doing a talk about APA style and writing. So I'm hoping she's going to do outlines too, but I know that she has lots of resources about how to build really great outlines. The good news is if you start with that, and certainly by the time you get to this, the outline's not that hard to do because you already have a shell. But you want to create an outline so that when you actually start writing, you not only know where to go and what articles you're going to pull, but I really encourage you to do an annotated bibliography. Does anybody know what that is?
What was that?
An annotated bibliography?
Well, you read the article and then you just don't do an abstract. You put the main information of the article, but then you also evaluate, this is a good study, is a bad study, is this going to be helpful to my dissertation or not, you put your 2 cents into it.
You got it, yep. So yeah, instead of simply saving the article, right, and putting it in and maybe writing a quick line or two, really do an annotated bibliography, which means the APA style citation, and then underneath it, usually about 100 to 150 words, summarize the main points in a couple of sentences, and then add your 2 cents, right? And this is not something that anyone will necessarily see except you, right? So things like interesting findings about these population sample size really small, contradicted what Thompson and Thompson said, right? Things like that. So it's putting your 2 cents in, it's reminding yourself the main outcomes of the article, so that, Mary, when you were talking about how you organized everything and then there was this huge leap, you know, to the actual writing and you had to go back and reread articles and things like that, this is really a mediary step to that, and so it makes the writing so much easier when you have a reference like that. And some articles you'll end up chalking off completely while you're writing, because you'll say, you know what, this one really isn't relevant, but this one is, and I can go back to it. And you can, and depending on how well you write and how well you do the annotated bibliography, you can cut and paste from the annotated bibliography straight into your chapter 2. Okay.
So this should be done for each article that we plan to use.
Yep. And again, it doesn't have to be overly formalized. I don't want to intimidate people, but I will tell you how much faster the writing goes when that's there. Of course, I'm locked out. Let's see. I wanted to just show you, there's actually some resources on this handout I gave you. There's a couple of websites that I provided. So I just want to, this is going to take a while since we only have a few minutes. Yeah, I may not have time to pull these up. I apologize. It's going to make me sign in again and all of that, so that's going to take a minute. But basically, these are 2 websites that I've used in the past that I have recommended to students. The first one is a really good description of what an annotated bibliography is. And then the second one actually is an okay, not quite as good, of a description of what an annotated bibliography is, but it gives a couple of examples, and I think that's nice to have. So that's for you to read. It's notes to yourself. It's a little summary. And again, if you really put a lot of effort into it, then you can even really pull things directly into your literature review. Okay.
Is there a recommended number of references?
There isn't. You know, I thought that question might come up today.
Depends on your chair.
Yeah, it does. Some of it does depend on your chair and the department. You know, you can certainly grab our department chair, or we can look in the dissertation guide specifically for counseling. There really isn't, though. You know, I would say use enough sources to exhaust your topic. You know, that you have answered your research question. Well, not answering the research question, but attended to all of the elements in the research question. And I think, and if you get yourself to 20 pages, that is a requirement for our department at a minimum, I think you will find that it's not a concern, that you will get to where you need to be. I would also say, keep in mind the analytical piece. So if you rely too much on one source, say one book or one article, you're not going to get that analytical piece that's required, because you need to be synthesizing and you need to be organizing, you need to really be understanding. So if you don't have very many resources or you're over-reliant on a few, it becomes obvious. It becomes obvious in your writing. Usually the student picks up on it. They're saying, you know, I'm citing this one a lot over and over again. I think I need to diversify and synthesize. So those are some examples for annotated bibliography, and I realize we just have a couple of minutes. Wanted to give you this. This is also from the dissertation guide. This is basically just an example of how to start your literature review. Some examples of APA style, some hints, and then also it talks about how to close chapter 2. So I talked about the inverted triangle to your most specific points, but then also making sure you're closing with a summary or a recapitulation of the literature that you just reviewed, and some overall conclusions. And then usually a sentence or two that leads into chapter 2. So, you know, or sorry, leads into chapter 3. So, you know, in chapter 2, we reviewed, or the writer reviewed these topics, and chapter 3 will now attend to the methodology. So here, that's a little bit of a format example. I've mentioned using headings for organization. You know, sometimes when I'm writing a big piece that has a lot of literature, a lot of theoretical background, I'll put the headings first, so they're already on my paper, and then start filling out, so it keeps me online. Take breaks, right? This is something that you know, can really fill your head and fill your days, depending on your style of working. And it's easy to get lost in it because it's so long. So make sure you're taking breaks, you're coming back, you're reviewing your research question. Are all of these relevant? Are they all tying back? Are they all making sense? Reread them, edit them, and then recycle back to, you know, the requirements of this section to make sure that you're still picking up. Have somebody outside read it, take a look at it, whether it's your chair, committee member. Make sure you're staying on track. All right, we sped up a little bit there at the end, but hopefully we covered everything. Any questions, comments? People feel a little more comfortable with how to get started?
Extremely helpful, yeah. I hadn't really thought about, I mean, I've written papers, but no.
Yeah, sometimes with papers you can get away with just kind of jumping in and writing. It's just not the case with this. It's just too big.
Oh, yeah. Very helpful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, and good luck to all of you as you're beginning that journey.
Thank you.